What's going on, everybody? Welcome to a weekly album club. I almost said Wednesday, but guess what? It's not Wednesday yet. Hey, look at us. We're like the Canarus quintet of metal YouTube. Here we are. We got the band back together. Jim, good to see you, brother.
Yeah, what's going on? Welcome, world. It's good to be back. Out of the hospital and into the light. Wearing my Vile shirt. I love me some the neck. I think his first one with Cannibal is the best. I really like this album. I mean, any album with the song "Devoured by Vermin." I mean, come on, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So we'll get to what's been spinning. So been spinning the hell out of this Malefic Throne, man. Oh boy. So Gene's other album this year, also destroying the Conquering Darkness. Steve Tucker on it, and the drummer from Angel Corpse, just amazing all the way around. You know, more riff experimentation, than on his other band, Perdition Temple, which is pretty much, pummeling the whole time. There's a little bit more tempo variety here. The crazy cymbal and ride work of this drummer is amazing. I've always loved his drumming in Angel Corpse, and he really just shines again here. And of course, Steve Tucker, his delivery is killer. So if you like Perdition Temple, you're gonna be picking this one up too. It's so killer. I've been playing the heck out of it. Decided to look up some Atheists, Unquestionable Presence, another great classic record. I just finished the Born Human Chuck Schuldiner biography, so it's been inspiring me to look up some of these bands again.
Did you finish the book, or you just started it?
I just finished it. Yeah.
What'd you think?
I really liked it, man. It's Chuck's a complicated character, and I like that they showed all sides of him, good and bad. You know what I mean? And I still think his really dumb of him to cancel that opportunity to tour with Creator back in the day, co-headlining. That would have been such an amazing conquering.
Yeah.
I can see why his bandmates got mad about that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like that they kind of posited that maybe some of his erratic behavior may have been caused by the incoming of the tumor, because they said that it affected where it was in the hippocampus can affect behavior. So it's something to think about.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Which brings me to Control Denied, and and I always like the music on this end, but Tim Amar's vocals are kind of hit or miss for me. I think after reading the book, I'm softening a little bit on his vocal delivery. It didn't bother me so much.
He's good.
Yeah, he's good. And so, I think I might check out that Pharaoh record. Didn't he do that with Chris Black, Marty?
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, I think I might check that out and get a little more time in with old Tim Amar. So other than that, just wanted to throw this in here as well. Loving this Terror Corpse off of Dark Descent. This is just crushing just dirty metal, dirty death metal. A little bit of keyboards thrown in here to kind of give it a little more color. So Dark Descent does it again. Terror Corpse.
All right, good to see you back, Kellen. How you doing?
Doing good. I'm happy to have the full crew here to kind of close out the year. On that note, I'll just say, for everyone who's made traditionally Wednesday and the past couple weeks Tuesday a part of their sort of routine and joining us for Album Club, thank you so much. We really appreciate having everyone show up and talk about metal stuff midweek. So very much appreciated. Let's see things. Veterans of the Album Club, people who've watched us in the past, we covered this one week. I pulled this off the shelf. Heir Apparent and Graceful Inheritance. So we covered this, I want to say, about a couple of years ago for Album Club. But anyway, some sort of U.S. progressive heavy metal. Also, I just want to add this Eric Lornoy, I believe is the pronunciation of the last name. Probably my favorite 80s album cover artist. He did, Open the Gates for Miller Road, as well as The Deluge. A few other bands from America. I think he had a relationship with Black Dragon Records. was doing a lot of the work for that label, but really did good stuff. And this Heir Apparent album cover, I think, is pretty awesome. Man, it is officially, this past week it dropped. We had a balmy, like 70-degree Christmas, or back in the 20s around here, and pulled off. It is always officially, if it gets below freezing and my beard turns to ice when I go out for my daily runs, it's usually Evil Feast season for me. So
Great band. Project, I should say.
Yeah, so Lost Horizons of Wisdom, I was spending some time with the earlier parts of the catalog. This might be the first really great record in the catalog. I like their early stuff, but I think the synth work by the time we get here, I think comes into its own. So let me know if any Evil Feast in the fans or in the chat tonight, let me know if you have a favorite record that potentially differs. But that's the first, great one for me. And then eyeing here 2026. It has begun in my mind. And we got a promo in that I'm thinking about approaching here. This release came out in 2019. I liked it a lot. The band has since moved to a different record label. But this is Japan's Invictus, their 2019 release, The Catacombs of Fear. But they've got a new one out, I think, that is coming on Memento Mori and Misako Unoho. But Japanese death metal, I think at the end of January this releases. So first 2026 release. I revisited their debut full length here and enjoying it in preparation to potentially cover their second full length here in 2026.
Right on. Good to see you. Logan, hello. Welcome. How are you?
Hello. I am doing well. Had a great time on Friday doing the year endless stream with everybody. Everyone's picks were awesome. It was really cool to be involved and just kind of hear the response from everybody, man. It's been nothing but positive, keeping the year endless stuff going. For me, we're still very much in 2025 year endless season. Did a kind of a poll on the Heavy Metallurgy Discord server to determine the Discord's collective end of year album, and wouldn't you know it, it was Havakruna's To Vastland. This one keeps popping up. I think this is a definite fan favorite from 2025, no matter if you're in the heavy metallurgy world or outside and just the metal world in general. I mean, everyone's been talking about this album. It's definitely a triumph for the band and a high watermark for black metal and just metal in 2025. So it was no surprise to see this kind of win our little poll in Discord by a landslide. Stangaragal came in second, and then Century, Sign of the Storm, came in third, and sorry, Marty, Halloween was fourth of 10 albums. So it's not terrible, though. I think you and your son might have been half the votes.
If you're not in first, you're last.
But then I enjoyed taking a break from only listening to 2025 stuff, which is kind of what I've been doing all month, and kind of check out some recent blind buys I've run across. Found a record store close by where there's just a whole bunch of like metal albums I've never heard of for $2 to $3 a pop. That's speaking to me. This is Your Grund with The Graven Sign. This is like an Australian thrashy black metal band. Debut album from 2002, out on Baphomet Records. Very straightforward but powerful stuff. Out in 30 minutes, a lot of energy. Kind of enjoyed it. Definitely was scratching like an itch, kind of in between Destroyer 666 and something a bit more just straight up black metal. So, and then I've actually really been enjoying a lot of thrash over the past 2 days. Like, that's basically been all I've been listening to, just a bunch of 80s, like more technical leaning stuff. I think probably because of this Mekong Delta we've been listening to. But I realized I haven't listened to any Annihilator in a while, so I pulled out this helpful from the crypt or from the vault set from Roadrunner. I'm kind of bummed. This is the only go-to album set I have from Roadrunner like this. They've got a bunch of cool ones like Suffocation and Sepultura, but we've got Alice in Hell and Never Never Land. Of course, always Alice in Hell to me is vastly superior in every respect. I mean, no offense to Neverland. It's got some good tracks on it, but there's also a song about macaroni and cheese, so that takes it down a notch for me, sadly. But man, even just the title track Alice in Hell is something special. Like, I don't know if Annihilator ever made something quite as good as that title track since then, but I'm not an Annihilator aficionado, so take it with a grain of salt. But good to be here, though.
Good to see you, Rick. Good to see you as well. Welcome.
Yeah, good to be back. I'm used to being the third wheel, not a fifth wheel, but here I am.
You're still on the wheel.
Join this very merry monkey while I still can before they go off the shelves. So it's growing fond of it. Oh yeah, before I forget. So now that Jim's back, welcome back, Jim. So because you were talking about Corpse Grinder, and did you know that Glenn Danzig ate Corpse Grinder over here? Just breaking news. We don't know how some of you feel about Glenn Danzig.
Yes.
or the band, should I say. But yeah, I got a few things. Looking to dive into some Mekong. This might be familiar to some of you guys. It's the only one I have, but I'm looking to kind of correct that along with the Mekong stuff. I don't know why you guys used aliases for this. We can get into that a little later, but some classic heavy metal. This is not quite to form from what they would be later on. This is a little more, I don't know, primitive is the word, especially if you're used to the Mekong stuff. Got some Restless Breed, catching up on my ride again. Going back to the 80s, good stuff. Man, if you're coming from Thundersteel to this, those AOR moments.
It's not a good direction to go, I guess, but that still rules. It's still good.
Yeah, it's a fun listen. I don't know why they never made like a Were Seal movie. Like being, you got this nice little seal moon over here and all that stuff, which all the little tropes they like to do. The movie would probably be over in 5 minutes. You just throw a beach ball at it. And,
Kevin Smith did that movie Tusk, where the guy turns the other guy into a walrus, surgically transforms him into a walrus.
That's a brutal movie. That's yeah.
Why is it always wolves? It's like the can do other things.
Yeah.
I've been excited about Tenebro. And so I just ordered the new one. I know Iron Fortress has vinyl copies available for those looking to. It's a December drop, so this is one of those albums that's not going to make lists. Being that it's such a late drop, but if you like a little bit of I don't know, it's like Machetazo with some Fulci and Mortician and all that stuff with that giallo wrapped horror. It's good stuff. So. One of my favorites in the sort of death grindy kind of thing. Got my Liminal Dread order, so still going through some stuff. This right here is a cool listen. It's kind of atmospheric black metal out of the UK called Dawn Treader. And so the label's out of Philly. I think I showed you Vanessa Funk the last time, so it's the same label. Imagine it's like Sayor with elements of Panopticon. It's like a European Panopticon, but the vocals a little more in the lower register. You don't get the high screechy side of it. But good stuff, Dawn Treader. If you guys are looking for something different and a little, but if you're comfortable with the atmospheric black metal, and I just I'm excited about this. It's the end of the year and all the commemoration stuff's coming out, so. Gonna do a little bit of reading. This Aussie one came out, Classic Rock Magazine. Put this one out. I like the charm in the back where it says "bat not included" with this, so pretty neat. And of course, Life Magazine has a Remembering Ace Frehley issue. I like these because they have a lot of really cool photos and just kind of going back to these times, kind of reminisce and all that stuff. It's like those were those were the days. And same thing with the Aussie one and all the old photos and stuff. So during New Year's, maybe catch up on a little bit of articles and whatnot. But glad to be back for another week. So thank you guys, and dive into some thrash, some very special thrash.
Yeah, right on. All right, for me, my listening has been a little subdued here the past few days. Getting ready for a Running Wild deep dive we're doing with Lee from Warhammer 666, the band, and from Morian Productions. We're going to be doing that week from Friday. So I've started my homework, Gates to Purgatory, the debut full length. Fun record. We'll talk more about it in a couple days. Branded and Exiled, Running Wild. This is as far as I've gotten, but the early years are a pretty easy reevaluation. It's the later stuff I'm gonna have to spend a little bit more time with. And yeah, a record arrived on my doorstep today. I'm like, I don't remember ordering anything. Cool. Well, it was Halloween Keeper of the Seven Keys, a Legacy from Carbon Stars. He's in the chat. Thanks so much, Casey. Again, very kind gift. I'm whittling down my Halloween list. I'm going to get them all on LP, and Casey helped out with the quest. So I don't know why they didn't use that cover for the album. That would have been a little bit better than what they opted for. But anyway, yeah, great. Thank you so much, man. I really, really, really appreciate it. But today we're going to be talking about Mekong Delta's second album called The Music of Erich Zann. And for those who don't know, the band Mekong Delta was formed by a group of German metal musicians with the goal to musically outshine all then current independent releases. The lineup and the history of the group was to be the best kept secret in the world. The project participants decided to keep everything about the band a secret, assuming German musicians would not be accepted internationally. The initial name Zardoz was rejected, followed by the acceptance of the name Mekong Delta, named after a riverbed in Vietnam. The entire project was started by Ralph Hubert, sound engineer for Warlock, Steeler, and Living Death, and owner of the record label Arg Music. The first demos of Mekong Delta were recorded with the following lineup: Jochen Schroeder for X-Rage on guitar, P.V. Wagner from Rage on bass, which is awesome, Jorg Michael, X-Rage, and Paganini on drums, and Wolfgang Borgman on vocals. So the roots of this band are very steeped in Rage lore, it seems. But first impressions, Jim, since it's been a hot minute for you, why don't you fire us off here? Get us rolling.
Yeah, well, first of all, I'm going to pronounce it Mekong Delta because I've always pronounced it that way, and I'm not going to change it now. So, but
This
yeah.
test is not graded.
yeah. I just looked it up. It is like Mekong, but in American English, it's okay to say Mekong, and that's the way I've always said it. So whatever. So I had only ever heard their debut, and I liked it, but I just, for whatever reason, just never picked it up. But even listening to that one, it has been years. So I couldn't tell you, prior to this being selected what they sounded like at all. It had been so long since I'd heard this. But man, I threw this in, and we all know I'm a thrash guy. I loved it immediately, man. Just crazy, odd time signatures thrown everywhere. Really giving what could have been like, standard thrash riffery, like an edge and an angle that made it interesting, to the point where, you didn't really know what was going to come next. I love that, and subsequent listens, kept finding new things every time. The challenge, for Mekong Delta, and I'm sure this is, for something we'll get into, but, are the vocals, the vocals are, they kind of push right up against being pitchy, and it's kind of like I'm just going to sing whatever I want. I don't care what key the music's in, but it's, what's strange. It's like he's still like a really good singer in terms of his vibrato control and like, and the fact that he can hit different keys and stuff like that. So I kind of just looked at it as another weird dissonant element to the music that is also in and of itself weird and dissonant, so it wasn't like a big stretch for me to embrace that as well, though that was the more difficult part. But yeah, I love thrash, and just and to hear like it not only brought technically in terms of guitar playing. When we say technical, we usually think about the riffs and stuff, but the rhythm section, man, the odd time signatures, the way the serpentine playing of the bass player that's always just running all around whatever the guitars are doing. There's just something, to me, like every second here, something to grab onto and to just kind of ponder, like, oh, what are they doing there? What are they doing there? And I love that when I'm kind of brought into like a musical mystery, trying to think about like what's going on here. Now, I do think, for my personal taste, like technicality can go too far, where it's just so over my head, I don't get any enjoyment out of it. Where the showing off of the capabilities outweighs songwriting, but that's not the case here. I think these are all well constructed songs, and so we'll get into that. It's not perfect. There is one song that I thought it's a complete dud, but overall, man, I was super happy that this came across, and I want to get more Mekong Delta. I did order this one. Spoiler alert.
Right on. All right, Kellen.
Yeah, so this was the first Mekong Delta that I heard. I think it kind of was a part of the time period where I was listening to more and more sort of not just complex or technical thrash, but potentially like the second or third tier, sort of when you're kind of getting into thrash as a genre. Like I heard a lot of the German bands, and maybe the first one you hear that is going to be a bit more technical, something like Destruction. Like Mekong Delta was like a venture deeper into that rabbit hole. Like, okay, this is going to be more complex and even stranger. And Erich Zann's the one that I initially heard. Out of all the bands that kind of play in this style, it's one that I've struggled with historically to fully embrace. So it's always like I heard it and it's like, yeah, this is pretty wild and crazy. But I'd always reach for like Coroner. Or I'd always go for, like Watchtower. If I wanted something strange, this was never like the one band that I thought was up on the list. Like I began to appreciate something like Anacrusis. Like this was further down year after year. So when Logan pulled it and was like, let's spend an entire week with this band, because I always thought they were special, but always a little bit of a challenge and sort of less appealing relative to a lot of their peers. So this is probably the first time I'd spent a whole lot of time with it this past week.
All right, Rick.
Yeah, well, first impressions, this is the kind of band, if you're getting into, the first thing they're going to make you do is do some homework, because what the hell is a Mekong Delta? It's not exactly the roll off your tongue catchiest kind of name. You wouldn't think of a thrash band, but they're not a typical thrash band. I think they kind of came. Now they had their other bands, of course, So when they incorporated as Mekong Delta, they were trying something a little different. They're coming into a scene where, by this point, the thrash scene is kind of starting to get very saturated. At this point, my experience with this band has been very limited. It's been kind of tracks here, tracks there, but I've never been. I guess I felt compelled to go out and I must have all their stuff. I'm very here and there with some bands. I mean, I know they get comparisons to some of the other kind of quirky, very odd time signature kind of bands. But if you're looking for something a little more interesting, I'm trying to avoid using the word cerebral, with this. Because usually when you associate bands with interesting time signatures, usually that word kind of hits. But I think they have enough of that thrashy raw elements there that you can still enjoy it in such a way, kind of what you were saying, Jim, earlier, what you were kind of implying, that you don't have to be a thinking man's kind of thing to enjoy this kind of music. They have their moments where you can kind of get in and kind of handbang to a lot of this stuff and not have to really focus too much on. I mean, if you want to go there, they do some interesting things when we get into the talks about the performance and production about this. But this is a band I always wondered why they were never mentioned more. I know they're out of Germany. They're never talked about in the cusp of the big four. It's like they're on that peripheral, with everything else. So I'm glad Logan pulled this, and so it kind of forces me to kind of explore this. I pulled that little trick last week with Loud Blast. I felt like some people needed it. That was a band that was a little neglected. I feel like it's kind of a similar turn with Mekong Delta.
I'll let you go last, Logan, since you got the question for the week. For me, this is the first time hearing this band ever. I've seen their name around. I've heard them mentioned, and I've heard this all week long and the week before. And my first impression was these guys don't sound German and they don't sound like Voivod at all. So I don't know. I listen to this and I hear a little bit of Anacrusis. It's funny that Kellen mentioned them, but I mostly hear Watchtower. They're a little less crazy adaptation of the Watchtower sound, but it's just funny how non-German they sound. I mean, you start piling on like techie thrash, you think of like Death Row, they still sound very absolutely German. Something in the accent, the English speaking German, it has an accent, a sound, a style. I mean, Milla, all the thrash bands, they have that essence. It's a very German, English speaking German thing. And these guys sound American. Their singer sounds American, everything. First impression, complex, interesting how they go in and out of standard time signatures. Very interesting. I'm a little less sympathetic of the vocalist than Jim. I think his shouting style fits great. Perfect. When he starts doing the melodious stuff, he's out of pitch a lot of time. It's annoying. It's like nails on the chalkboard bad. Some of the songs that was like this background.
Yes.
In trying to sing, it's out of key. It just sounds like nails on the chalkboard, man. But for the most part, I love his barking, sharp style. It fits the tight nature of the music. It's very cool to hear this band finally, and they're not at all what I would have expected, especially with a name like that. Logan.
Yeah, I'm glad to be listening to this. Honestly, I have no business, having heard this band or even owning this band's material. Like I'm not a thrash guy necessarily, let alone a 80s or German thrash guy. Especially like a technical, progressive, out there, obscure 80s German thrash band. But
we're working on it. We're working on it.
Believe me, and this was like close to a decade ago. So I was even
further
further away from where I'm at now. Like this is one of those like classic stories of just a good old record store, blind buy story. Like those, the ones that we love to tell. There was this place in Charlotte called Manifest Discs. They did a buy two, get one for $1 deal for all their used records. So I walk in, see all three of these for $7 a pop. And these are all the ARG pressings.
$7.
$7. So I end up walking out with all three of these for like $15.
Did the sticker say special Logan pricing? It had to.
Well, I always bring my own stickers wherever I go to places. So
Smart.
I put it on there. And so I walked out with these just based on the album cover and like, they look cool. They look cool as fuck. They look like obscure, 80s metal of some kind. So I walked out and I was immediately in over my head when I finally hit play on these, and like I could barely wrap my brain around this one, the self-titled debut. I definitely could not around this. The opening track for music of Erich Zann is Pain of Agony or something. Age of Agony. And that's the one that has that like staccato wailing, like pitchless vocal that just like it drove me up the wall. I didn't know what the hell to do with it. It honestly probably ruined my whole listening experience the previous times I've tried it. So I've probably spun this one a couple times over the year. This is their third album. The Principle of Doubt. Probably listened to this one like once or twice before this week. And whenever I would go to the M section of my records would be this one, the self-titled, because it did feel the most traditional thrashy. There are some weird vocal choices as well, but this one probably sounds a bit more German, Marty. I feel like you would recognize a bit more of their heritage in the debut. But yeah, there is something about the vocal performance on here that is meant to perplex you. And even preparing for this week's stream, the first spin, just talking about first impressions, it was still not an easy experience. The first track, really rough on that chorus, which is like just way out there, and they bring it back every now and then. It becomes a lot less prominent throughout the album, but mainly just the off the wall nature of the vocals and the fact that they don't care what the music is doing. They're kind of doing their own thing, as like a counterpoint to how the music is being played. They're just a little haphazard. That was basically all I could kind of focus on. Like, I could definitely hear and like enjoyed the instrumentation, but man, the first impression is the vocals are definitely something to get around. So for me, I knew there was no way to enjoy it without wrapping my head around the vocals. So I had to kind of roll up my sleeves and get ready for a week of maybe some work. I wasn't sure if it was going to be a hard task to figure it out or what, but definitely an obtuse first impression. So I don't think there was any way around me having this kind of first impression. In fact, I was definitely feeling weird and comfortable, and it reminded me of my first experience with Voivod. So I know Voivod's already been mentioned in the chat. Marty, you mentioned it. And
Devin mentioned it.
Okay, Devin mentioned
I said it didn't remind me of Voivod.
To be fair, like even back when I was first getting into this, when I looked up Mekong Delta, people were like German Voivod, and even this week I heard people say German Voivod. Devin just said that. And this leads me to my question. There certainly seems to be a trend in thrash where North American bands are used as a yardstick for bands from other countries. For example, I've always heard Mekong Delta referred to as the German Voivod. Is this a fair, quick assessment for the band, or does it unfairly attribute certain qualities to Mekong Delta's music? Does simplifying a band's sound in such a manner help or hurt their legacy?
Rick.
Well, like you said, Marty, what's his name? Borgman, Wolfgang doesn't sound like the typical German side of it. He's very far away from, what you'd expect, what you hear from the typical like Big Four and these other kind of bands. But it's really easy to pick on that vocal technique. I feel like he takes a lot of liberties and he's very loose in the way Snake is. I know you don't hear Voivod in this, but I think there are some there's certain characteristics that I hear that I can understand why people might make the similarity. But you're a big Voivod fan and you've heard everything, so it's very at that point you kind of hit that that position where you can pick out the differences very easily. But for those who are very light on this band or Voivod in general and comparing to stuff like it's what I call a lazy comparison, right? So I can see why the lazy comparison kind of sticks for something like this, because when people think of thrash, they're thinking of the Teutonic guys or the Bay Area stuff, and then you got these other offshoots, at the same time, a little more tertiary bands who are a little more out there, a little more experimental, a little more. They kind of deviate from that other kind of formula. But I think that going to Logan's question, like I don't know if it hurts them. At the same time, it was all about that timing. I think kind of what I was saying earlier, like they came in or they incorporated Mekong Delta. If you listen to the last Protected from Reality, Living Death record, and I started to hear a lot of similar riffing when that transitions into that first Mekong Delta album. It's just kind of stylistically, but I think what's the guy, Ralph, the bassist, it's a big player in this. I kind of see the Steve Harris thing going on where he's got these little quirks about the way he's playing that really kind of gels things together and really adds some interesting dynamics with the way they kind of move it outside and gives kind of Mekong Delta its own little identity. It kind of puts it outside from everybody else. Right from the get-go, you already know this is not a band that wants to be lumped in with a lot of other similar kind of bands, including Voivod. They're kind of trying to form their own identity and whatnot. I don't know if this band was even aware of Voivod, when they first incorporated, what the climate was like, if they were communicating in any way to where this Canadian band, or if they were on their own little islands. But if they were on their own little islands, it's interesting how some bands can come to this mindset to kind of move in this direction, to do something that's clearly, which they know won't be very digestible and very super accessible, which is not really, they're out there to do something different and interesting, with stylistically, with this genre of metal kind of overall.
All right, Jim.
Yeah, I'm with Rick here. I'd say the German Voivod thing kind of feels like a lazy assessment there. I think it's just saying, okay, well, they're weird and they're technical, so that makes them Voivod. Like, I don't get that. Voivod has a lot of like atonal jazz elements in here, and I don't hear atonal jazz in here. I hear dissonant classical music in here. You know what I mean? So I think that their direction technically is from a completely different area, of music, where they're coming across, for their interpretation of, their instruments. Yeah, I think it is an oversimplification to your point, Logan, but I also think it doesn't hurt them because, Mekong Delta isn't a band that rolls off, the tongue of your average metal fan anyway. Like, I was always aware of them because, I'm a child of that era, but, I think for, people just getting into the scene or that are frankly just a lot younger than me, this is a band they'll come across, later on in their deeper dives into the metal universe. But, I think that they kind of need to be judged on their own. What they do is frankly, it's quite unique. It is hard to take. The vocals are difficult, but I'm when I think about Alter Oblivion, another band you brought up, Logan, that had pitchy vocals, and now I own almost everything they ever did. So I guess I'm starting to have a soft spot for pitchy vocals now. And like I said earlier, I see it as like another element of what they do. There's a lot of dissonance, and the melody here on this record is only like little sparks of it during guitar solos, where they'll like do a dual harmony. There isn't like a whole heck of a lot of melody in here, but there's a ton of dissonance. Just enough melody to kind of break it up where it isn't like an assault on you the entire time. This isn't Titan Blood, you know what I mean? There's time for you to take a breather, and there's even obviously the acoustic song in the middle.
Very rhythmic and percussive riffing. I mean, it's very lockstep.
Yes, but what's cool about it is it's not like a groovy lockstep; it's an odd time signature like lockstep. So, but yeah, so that's my take on it. I think that they deserve like a different kind of descriptor, not Voivod at all, but something more into of a classical influence in terms of technical output.
All right, Kellen.
I get where that comparison would come from. Now, I don't know, like at the time of this release, if these comparisons were being made. Like I don't know how big. Killing for Technology might be like the apex predator in the weird prog of the thrash world. I don't know if there's another record that is critically and loved in that same way Killing Technology is. So maybe I get where people would reach for that. That's like the closest sort of epitome of thrash that you could potentially, like Watchtower doesn't have a Killing for Technology record. I mean, Anacrusis doesn't have one that is like that successful, that iconic. So I can understand why people would reach for that. I do think, to Jim's point though, it serves as the comparison serves as being helpful in terms of the differences between them, not the similarities. Meaning, like, yes, on its face, are they technical? Are they proggy? Are they complex, relative to, let's say, I don't know, Exodus? But what separates them are they're the key differences in terms of how they're progressive or how they're complex. Those are subtleties that I think fans of the genre would probably pick up on, and we're going to get to the songwriter later on. And trying to differentiate between sort of the progressive, like, rock influences on a very punk voivod versus neoclassical influences on a Mekong Delta. Like, those are key differences that separate them and make them important. But I can understand why bands or people or fans would conflate the two of them when talking about these two bands. So I think it's a good sort of starting point, and should not diminish ultimately what makes this band sort of special, and their contribution, sort of the more technical aspects of thrash overall.
All right. For me, I mean, you want to hear the American sound in a country, look no further than England. I mean, you hear a lot of Testament, bands like Zentrix, Metallica. You got Onslaught, that their sound kind of snuck into some of the Onslaught stuff. Acid Rain. I mean, the English really, really looked at the Americans, and I always saw that, a lot of the bands I digested in my younger years from Germany, they had their own thing. They were darker, they had more twisted and gristled, from the earth quality. They just seemed much blue collar. I don't know, just what Sodom was from a mining town. I mean, that's kind of stuff. It gets into every fiber of your music, where Testament stuff like that sounds like a sunny city. That's kind of the sound. The Florida death metal has that kind of sunny, maybe a little too hot, sweltering gator action going on in its notes and beats. And did this help or hurt Mekong Delta? I think, Devin said it earlier. I think what hurt them was they weren't on any of the big, they weren't on SPV, they weren't on Noise, they weren't on any of the big labels that were devouring the thrash from that area. So they were put out on someone that's in the band's label. So that hurt them already. And if part of their stylistic emulation is, got bands like Anacrusis and Watchtower, both of these bands are fantastic. But even there, you're starting to look at unique thrash bands that even in the thrash world at large in the US, they were a very small minority of fans. They tour all over the place, like Anacrusis. They toured a lot, got on some bigger tours, and they were still kind of a cult classic type of band. Their sonics appealed to a certain ear. Watchtower too. I mean, Watchtower was pretty wackadoodle at times. Some of their music was so complex. I'm not saying Mekong Delta is a direct reflection of them, but they have the same tightness, the same type of playing with time signatures. I mean, the style of bands they're emulating already are at a disadvantage because they're not upon everyone's lips. They're not popular bands. So I think that is a bigger factor from my mind anyway. They didn't get signed by the right labels that had the wider distribution. And the color they were modeling themselves after just wasn't a widely accepted stylistic subgenre of thrash. Logan, what did you think?
So on face value and like at a superficial level, I do think the Voivod comparison is apt. Like, as you were kind of saying, Marty, of bands that are well known that people can actually reach for, Voivod's kind of found themselves as like the masters of anything borderline weird or proggish or avant-garde style.
And they
thrash,
too, people
tag
either
it.
love or
Like,
hate them. Love or
Yeah.
hate them. There's
Yep.
there's no real middle of the roads there. You know what I mean? Go ahead. Sorry.
No, yeah, and I was like gonna say, so I mean, Mekong Delta fall under that banner of, you know, they look alien, like all their covers and stuff, like, you know, we're looking a little bizarre. There's not like a mushroom cloud of a nuclear blast and a Ed Repka guy right there on the cover.
Plus the color scheme's a little sickly too.
Yeah.
I was doing the thumbnail. I'm like, man, I don't like any of the colors they chose for this.
Let's
This
just go
sucks.
brown. Let's just be
Yeah.
brown the whole time.
Smeared in baby shit.
Yeah. So I mean, I think it makes sense. And then you look at the music itself, and like on first listen, I mean, it's weird to me. It's weird. And when I first heard Voivod, it's also weird. It's atonal. I don't necessarily know what to do with it. The mix of the vocals and the instrumentation sound like they're clashing at times. So, like on first listen, and for many years, I'm 100% on board with like, yes, they sound like German Voivod, and I'm not really going there. I'm not really, feeling that. So maybe them having that tag might have made it easier for me to dismiss Mekong Delta and these records I got, because I'm like, I don't click with Voivod really. I don't understand their music, so how am I going to understand Mekong Delta's music? So that, from my perspective as a fan, that that hurt me getting into hurt Mekong Delta, prevented me from kind of trying to get into them more often. But I mean, like, I feel like the average Voivod fan might be more likely to click with this kind of sound. I don't know. We've got a pretty big Voivod fan in here with us right now, so I'll just have to watch throughout the episode and see what happens with Marty and if he likes it or not. But I do think as you dive in deeper, Kellen nailed it. It's just, you spot the differences. Voivod ended up being like this art project with Motorhead, a little bit of Motorhead, a little bit of punk, a little bit of like prog, Pink Floydism in there, and they're really trying to tell the story of their central character, and they kind of just get lost in it and go wherever the hell they want to go. I think Mekong Delta really try to stick more in the thrash vein. I've only been up to 3 albums so far with Mekong, but they don't seem like they're leaving thrash, which Voivod, I just recently picked up Nothing Face. Even by that album, I feel like they left thrash. Like, I've really been getting into that album a lot over the past week or two.
They really leave it on the album after that. It's pretty much a prog record. I hated it when it came out.
That might be the next place I go with Voivod, I think. But Mekong here feels like they're still trying to play thrash and trying to play something very rooted in metal. Like, I feel like they even trace their roots back to Black Sabbath and new wave of traditional heavy metal. Like, on their debut, there's a song here called Black Sabbath, which has a very slow Sabbathy style riff, and there's a song on here that also starts out slow and maintains this slow and brooding feel the whole time. And I do think there's some traditional metal melodies in some of these songs. Of course, there's also the new classical vibe and just how they incorporate that, and that's entirely different, from Voivod. And I think they take a bit. I think there's some prog in Mekong Delta too, but it's a bit of a different style and more eclectic in, like, Yes and Genesis and Van der Graaf Generator and stuff like that kind of prog, just like more off the wall stuff. Like that outro, like sing-songy interlude, that sounded like Yes. Isn't that? Oh, I love it. I love that. Are you kidding me?
It's bad.
That sounded like Yes. It made me think of Yes from the Fragile, like all those interlude tracks, where it's just the vocals like bouncing off of each other. I was here for it. But the vocal layering makes me think of Yes. So I do think as you get further into thrash, when you're talking to someone who's more into thrash than just like a surface level, that's when you're going to start breaking out the Watchtower and Anacrusis descriptors and stuff, and leave the Voivod as more of a, it's kind of lazy, but superficially, I think that works. Either way, it didn't necessarily work for me on my first go around. So.
All right, guys, let's talk about the musicality and composition of the music of Erich Zann. Rick.
First of all, I don't know if it's been brought up, but I guess it's a concept album. This Erich Zann. I don't know enough about Lovecraft to know how the music and the themes fit in, kind of nice and tidy, with everything else, which I suppose is part of the reasoning with the way the band is generally how they sound, but also how they incorporate certain things with this, I guess, with the music to fit the theme of what they're doing with the Lovecraft thing, because it's very specific. So thought that was at least worth a mention. As far as the musicality, I think that between their other bands coming from Rage and Living Death and whatnot, even from there, I feel like they're very well when they're still rooted in that thrash, instead of going out to something that's more overly proggy. I don't think, I'm not saying that they don't have the chops to pull it off, but I don't think that's the forte they were really after. I think they were still rooted in trying to kind of stay in that sort of headbanging kind of maneuver music, musically, with what they're doing. They wanted to be first and foremost a thrash band, with all these other interesting elements. That's why I tried to avoid using that cerebral word. But I think that when you focus on the time signatures and everything going on, there are some strong points, but there are also some weak points. I think that the vocalist, Wolfman, he is trying to do this 6-octave thing when he's just a 2 octaves. Maybe I'd be a generous. He's 3-octave guy, trying to do this overly thing with the vocals. I kind of get the sort of peaks and valleys.
It's ambitious.
It's ambitious. I think when he goes most melodious, it's when he's at his weakest. But I'm not completely annoyed by it, because there are moments when I feel like he's having fun with it. When he's kind of toying around with these ideas, when he tries to get sort of a little more serious, he tries to sing. I think that's where that starts to falter.
Yeah,
to notice the cracks in what he's doing there. There are some tracks where I think he's a lot more stronger at, and it flows pretty well. But I think overall, I love the fact that there's things going on where it's not always, it's tight, but also loose enough where the bass is kind of doing its own thing. The guitars is doing this other thing at the same time. And then you have the drummer at the backbone trying to hold it all together. This is where the strong drummer, and I love the drumming on this. I just feel like the production doesn't quite bring out the best in all elements of everyone's sound all at once, the way I wish it would be. This is late 80s, and they're not on this gigantic label. So I can kind of forgive it for not, having those kind of things going on. So spoiler alert, Jim, I got a copy. You're waiting for yours. Because as I was listening to this online, I'm like, it wasn't doing justice for me. To know, is this how it really sounds? You can't always trust the digital source, True. So I wanted a proper CD to be able to get some of the sonic dynamic. I feel like with this band, it was worth doing. I'm not subscribed to a very high bit rate kind of thing, kind of service, and a good old CD. I think it's tried and true. And if you have good enough speakers, you can kind of get a lot of it. And I started noticing more things with the bass going on, how strong it was holding together the glue with because it's frantic, but it still felt held together through some sort of percussive or what do you call low ends duct tape, throughout all of this while they were maneuvering. I felt like the first half of the album, it's more aggressive, the more aggressive side. It was the more I guess blood pumping, when it comes to what you want out of your thrash.
That's what I want. Yeah, that's why I like that better. Yeah.
So, or in this case, if you have the vinyl, I know Logan does, so it would be the side A, kind of overall. There are some moments in side B too that do have some of this, but I just love the soloing on this. Very cool, interesting kind of frenetic way of kind of moving about, a little unpredictable, but not so jarring that kind of removes you from the music. So there's a lot here to bite into, but it does merit a lot of repeat listens to really begin to digest and really absorb into what's really going on here. So I think that while there are still some weaknesses, I don't think it's enough to kind of bring it down where it doesn't make it worth revisiting and listening to again. I think it's got a lot of really strong elements, despite the fact. But at the same time, I kept in the back of my mind, is this, and this is just speaking from a position where I'm not familiar with all their albums. I'm just focusing on the fact that it's a concept album because of the Lovecraftian Zann kind of situation. I'm not sure, but I would just keep that in mind with this particular album, kind of overall.
All right, Logan.
Yeah, so for me, I was able to get past my first impression hesitations with the vocal performance and really just the off the wall, dissonant kind of feel of the music. And even by the second listen, like I was starting to get into it, and this album definitely clicked for me. I think the only way it would have clicked for me was in a format like this, where I would had to listen to it, and I think that's kind of why one reason why I picked it. This is one of those albums and bands where you can't just fall into them casually. You need a situation where you got to dedicate some time and dedicate some attention and want to kind of understand it or click with it. So I kind of really ended up loving a lot of this album, and for me it's because of the songwriting. For some of these like progressive or off the wall kind of thrash bands, like Marty, that Death Row album you picked, Deception Ignored, technically a marvel. I was listening to it today just to check it out. I still can't make head or tails of it.
It takes a lot of absorbing. The riffs present themselves the more you dig into it, and I've been spinning that thing since high school. So
at this point, I've definitely returned to it multiple times since we've did it for Album Club, and it still has not unveiled itself to me. But really, by the second and definitely the third listen with this, I started noticing the compositional and like more straightforward elements of this album. Like there are some more straightforward, like just ripping thrash songs with like a chorus and a bridge, and you can really start to get the feel of it. And I ended up enjoying how they kind of crafted the songs, like they use even the vocals. I often don't get too hung up on vocals. I mean, I think if you get used to enough death or black metal bands, and especially like some of the howling that like DSBM vocalists can do, you can get past some out of tune, high octave wailing, which is still definitely some of the craziest thrash vocals I've that's my secret right there, Total Underground. But it definitely helped me get past the vocals, and I started hearing it as like a one extreme to the next. Like the song that helped make that click was True Lies. It goes from like this lead into the chorus with his high pitched like warble, but then the chorus is this just like hits you in the gut thrash delivery of we're goddamn manipulated, we are so guilty at their truth. And I don't know, I kind of like that that counterpoint to the high pitch to the more down to earth thrash delivery, and it's just so unique. I can't help but kind of being impressed with the fact that they pulled it off compositionally. Even that first song, Age of Agony, which is still not one of my favorites on the album, it's cool. And one of the perks and the pluses for this album is it does not overstay its welcome. It's 35 minutes.
Yeah.
Even the longest track is only like 5 minutes. It gets in, it gets out, and it's moving so fast, so quickly, because it really holds on to that thrash momentum and speed the whole way through. It was just kind of fun to strap in for the ride and just see what you recall as you're going through. Like for me, the vocals did end up being a highlight. I love the group vocals when they pop in.
A lot of gang yells.
I love the gang yells, man. It's
Yeah.
such a good, once again, counterpoint to the craziness of
Another
the main
American
vocalist.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the layering of the vocals. Like, some of you, I feel like, might not end up liking I King Will Come and its vocal arrangement. Oh, there, I found one. I found two. Oh my god.
I raised my hand. I will
Oh,
Jesus
preemptively
Christ, you
spoil
guys.
alert.
Oh,
That'll
you
be in
guys
my
are-
I feel like the
comment
local layering did enhance it. In some
I-
way. I like that. I like
I
that.
love the vocal layering. I thought it was awesome. I thought it was unique. I thought it was really cool. That's my favorite song on the album. I'll just get out of the way right now. That song blew me away. Like, damn, it's so catchy. Do you guys hear?
I'm
I
glad
hear
you like it.
Soundgarden.
I
in it.
don't.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. But just such a unique thrash album or thrash song and sound. I've never heard anything like that ever from a thrash album. The guitar work, though, to get into that, is a great, almost as out there. I'm crazy. Almost as out there performance as the vocals, and man, there's just so many snaking and winding melodies, like the chorus of Prophecy, the verses and like in between, the verses on Hatred. So many different like winding, snaking melody lines that the guitar work never gets old. Just phenomenal performance. The drums, another great highlight. Rick, I'm glad you mentioned that. I love it when the drummer finally gets a chance to go into full double bass mode and really build up the momentum and intensity for the music. And then the bass work just does a great job of kind of filling out the rest. And each musician is just extremely capable and brings something unique to the table. And as I said, I think it makes it entertaining all the way through. Even the parts that don't fully land, I think they're still interesting and still worth price of admission.
And Tony, we often are wrong, so it's fine. All right, Jim.
Yeah, these kind of composition. I mean, these guys can obviously really play. I love that, the bass is so prominent and it's just a force here. The drummer does a great job of just like owning these odd time signatures. He has, I like the underproduced feel of the whole album sonically as a whole. Like, and there's kind of a rumble of the double bass when he does his rolls and stuff that kind of fills in the perspective spectrum a lot. I really like that. And there's even like a bass solo on the Final Deluge where he's just like ripping on a distorted bass run, and it just sounds so cool. And obviously you're not the only band to do that, but not a lot of bands do it at all. So it's really cool to hear when the guitars are kind of like trading off licks back and forth for like, hey, give this guy a chance to shine, because everything he does on this record is just as interesting as anything that the guitar players are doing. And they have cool little elements, that make this a differentiator for me. Like, they have this tendency where they'll do in a couple songs like a volume swell, like in the middle of the solo, where they'll kind of just fade in and out with the melody line instead of just like playing the notes straight on. That's really cool, and it's not something people do a lot. And just adds like a little bit of kind of atmosphere for the brief kind of in and out. It's kind of hard to find the right word, but like how the solos just kind of come in and go away really quickly. They don't linger long, but doing that little bit of volume swell right there gives them more staying power. And even though I know, Logan, Marty, it's one of the things you hate about Age of Agony, I like that he does the falsetto along with that. That's sort of like that high volume swell there. I think it's really cool. I think it works less successfully on the second track, True Lies, where the falsetto was more up in the mix, and then it's a little bit tougher to swallow. But what makes up for me in that is the they do where a lot of this thing in that second song where they play one guitar's playing the open chord and another guitar's playing like a picked scale, and the bass player is just doing something crazy in between it that kind of brings it all together. So there's always something there to kind of grasp onto you, even if like the vocals are becoming a bit overbearing. And yeah, you know, they do some gang vocal stuff like you're saying, more like on hatred, but that isn't just an American thing, dude. Come on, man.
No, I
Destruction,
know, but it's very, very
release
much.
from agony. Come on, man.
Yeah,
We're
yeah.
all yelling it together.
Yeah.
That's not just an American thing, man. Come on.
Americans really used it a lot, though.
They use it more than anyone else. That I will grant you there. But you know, just some really kind of like unintentionally funny lines to me too. Like I love the one in Prophecy. You've got no choice, man. It's the only way. it just wouldn't have the same power without that comma, man.
Yeah.
But you know, it still really works all together in the context of the songs as a whole. I will say that, yeah, man, you guys are right about I King Will Come, man. That song is, that one's just, I'm like, what happened here? It's like, hey, let's just do something like off of Injustice for All or something like.
It can be played on the radio. It's got a,
I don't know what happened there.
It's like, is this sad but true?
Yeah, like it sound. I mean, even though this was like 3 years before the Black Album, it has that kind of like slow kind of Metallica bounce vibe to it. I don't know what was going on there, but you know, even that there the bass is playing a counterpoint to the main riff, and if you just focus on that during that song, it's cool. So again, to my overall point, there's always something to like grab onto, even in this band's worst moments. That, you know, either the drummer is like not playing any double bass and just hitting the snare for 4 bars before he does a roll all of a sudden out of nowhere. Or, you know, he's, you know, coming in off of a fill on the 5 instead of the 4, and it's just giving like what would be a simple riff sound more complicated. There's all these like weird little tidbits here that keep it interesting. You know, not so much, you know, I like to pick on Archspire. I'll pick on someone else. It's not like we're listening to Origin here. You know what I mean? Yeah. But because, you know, songs come first, you know, but they're all that, you know, twist to their playing where the technicality is there to kind of like, you know, push what could be simple into something interesting. That overarching tendency for them to do that in every song, you know, and in nearly every element up within the tempo changes of the song is what gives them color for me.
All right, Kellen.
Yeah, busy. So you have like these, already the rhythm work is super complex. And typically on top of that, you're going to have, I think, sort of single note sort of solos that are often, to your point, I think they've only talked about the melodic quality of this album. I think it's a pretty complex melodic listen. And that adds to already some degree of dissonance and, I don't know, unease with the addition of this vocalist. But before we get to that, yeah, I just like want to say like that's the bedrock of this album for me, is sort of complex short phrasing in terms of the riffs and sort of this sort of fast or single note sort of soloing that will usually sit on top of it. They don't hang around very long. Like, we'll take the beginning song here. So Age of Agony, you have that thing that going on. Basically, there's a trading sort of solo where the riff's happening. You have a solo sort of lead guitar part that sits on top of it. That drops off and the riff is sitting in the back. Solo with the bass comes in front and they trade back and forth twice. We get a guitar solo. They come out of it. Then we have, I mean, the band instrumentally is phenomenal, but this vocalist cannot hang at all. And he's trying, man. He's whatever within his skill set to hang on with this band. But like this, we compose all the themes that pursues in our dreams, messages downfall, like is going on in the background.
He's trying to do his best Schmear impersonation, and he doesn't get there.
And then behind that, there's like this sitting in the background all the way. Like he's trying to make it more complex, like a multi-tracking happening. There's several times during the course of this record where the vocalist is like 3 different places. I think that the one that stood out to me where he's trying to be like this, like popping his head around the corner, like trying to scream from a different part of the room. I think it's in Memories of Tomorrow. It's like he's like got his head like in the popped around the door, just kind of wanted to sing a little bit, let you know he's there kind of deal. He is like then confused. This record is a technically it's inspired by Lovecraft, but lyrically it is 100%. It's straight up thrash song. True Lies is a commentary on the Iran Contra controversy. Like it is straight up sort of military warfare, democratic paranoia lyrically, but the actual music composition is sort of this otherworldly thrash that makes sense with what's going on with Lovecraft. So I think there's a bit of confusion on this record. On True Lies, so that opening sort of stanza when he's like trying to be the reporter, who's like leading in the news story. Here are the news, and then Contra support. Like he can't make a decision how to end that phrase. He like wants to do the falsetto thing, but he doesn't have the voice for it, but he wants to be different. So he throws that like reach in there. It's, I kept on thinking when we were doing this, like, how you got to the point where we're doing the Dark Quarter review and come on, Devin, we got to be honest about this. All right. There's struggles here. We're listening to Dark Quarter, and like the part where you're listening to him sing and you're like, man, is he going to hit this note? And he nails it. But he's kind of like a little bit off and pitchy at times almost. So you're kind of nervous for him. I feel this vocalist is the one who like didn't make the leap, who like can't quite get there. And when he tries to add greater complexity into already a melodically complex listen, I think this thing is kind of messy at times. Sorry,
the truth comes out.
Down here.
He's throwing
like,
down truths, and Devin's like, I can't. He's right.
I think like if I constantly was thinking, man, if the vocals here were a little bit more precise or a little bit elevated, someone who could handle the level of complexity happening instrumentally here, this record would be so much better served. I think you're right, Marty, in terms of like when he's just doing the straight up thrash thing.
Fine.
I think it's fine, but
it's his wheelhouse.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's also kind of like boilerplate thrash vocals. So I can understand him wanting to be different, but it was
in this case, the music is so interesting that a boilerplate vocal performance doesn't rock the boat, and it's fine.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Yeah. But yeah, I think he at this point it was a challenge for me, and I think I'll kind of close by saying I think he's one of the reasons why I did not gravitate towards this record more often. That is right. I changed the name, Resident Hater of the Album Club. Come and get me. I'm not apologizing for this shit. I've been doing it too long. This is how I feel about this record. There's a lot of good things about it, but I do not like the vocals here.
Everybody go? Is it just me? Yeah. I agree with a lot of points here. I will say the music, I think, is really well constructed. I really like the drum performance here. The guy sounds very focused. And the way the album is very clean sounding, he's got to be tight. And the way he effortlessly switches between time signatures within a measure is really cool. There's times where he does it and it feels seamless, but all of a sudden the riff feels a little bit sideways. I love I can't remember which I have it in my notes, but I think the composition and the concept, obviously it's a concept album, but the composition, the first half for me is where I want this album to be. Musically, I find it to be the most interesting, the most energetic and fun and easy to listen to. You hit that interlude in the center and things start to kind of head south for me on this album. The interlude, it's got, first for 1988, I will say, I do like the classical. They actually have it sounds like a real orchestra. I like some of the things that are going on here. It's Into the Pandemonium hinted at that stuff as well. And nobody really got it right. And it isn't really gotten right here either. I like the concept of it. I like the feeling of it, but there's a lot of holes left in those compositions. So, and those songs, and I can really appreciate the band's wanting to realize that we need to do something on this album that isn't just, a complex hammering for 35, 38 minutes. Let's throw some depth, some culture. Well, let's do some things. And then we get to the kingdom will come. Oh my God. It's like it's like a different band. It's like pre-Pantera going groovy kind of, it doesn't sound exactly like Pantera, but it has kind of a weird stop-starty riff that tries to find a vibe, and his voice over the chorus is just like, oh, it's so bad. He's in there. He's in the right. It's just the way the music he's trying to, it's not a very chorusy chorus riff. And then to throw that very locked in, King will come thing, whatever. It's so annoying. And he does it a bunch. That album, it kills the album for me at that point. There's just some places where they fall short, but their strengths on the album for me is mostly the first half. I really like that lockstep, intricate musicianship where the guitars and the bass aren't necessarily playing the same thing, but they still sound completely locked in with the drummer. Very good, very well done. So these guys definitely have chops. I applaud their trying something different, but I think it comes up a swing and a miss on here. And the voice, Kellen really kind of nailed my sentiment is perfectly. So I'm not going to further talk about the production. Logan.
All right. Well, I mean, 1988, obscure German band, still on their own label, ARG. I didn't get a chance to look at who produced it. I'm assuming probably no one I've heard of.
I'll look real quick. I have it up.
Okay. Appreciate it. To me, it's good for what it is. Like, it can sound thin and a little bit narrow at times.
It doesn't
but
say.
I think it does to a certain extent. That does help with like the intensity and the weird, like, uneasy feeling that you get from this album. Just the fact that it, feels like everything's coming at you from this, like, one corner of the room, And to be fair, you can hear all the instruments. And to me, that's the most important element. You can hear all the instruments. Nothing is drowned out. I do think the vocals are a little too high in the mix at times, and the guitars sound a bit too thin and low. And I wouldn't mind, if they were swapped at certain sections during certain verses and certainly certain choruses. I mean, to get back to the vocals, just for a second. First off, guys, this is a German thrash metal band. I listened to Death Row's vocals. Those aren't stellar either.
They sound German, though.
Sure.
They sound German. No, his voice isn't great. But
does that
it's still
forgive
good.
it? Yeah, I'll have to tell this guy to have.
It's only passable if you like it. It's how that works.
I got you. It does. I always take it with a grain of salt, I guess. And for me, the weirdness adds to the quirky, unique nature of this music. Like I've never heard that style of vocal anywhere else. So I'm like, man, that's kind of cool. I kind of appreciate the fact they went out and stuck their neck out for a crazy whooping banshee vocal in a thrash album. Like that's kind of neat. Sorry, back to production though. I think the drums are the best of the like the instruments as far as production. Like they feel just like you're right next to him, especially the bass drums and the toms. Whenever he does the some fills, they sound awesome. Damn it, I'm back down to 0.
0 stars.
0 stars.
I guess Frederick's the sheriff tonight.
Town wasn't big enough. Yeah, I do like the drum performance, and I think the bass sounds great as well. So really no complaints besides the obvious ones as far as the production goes, just small nitpicks. I think it's 1988 and this is not a bigger German thrash release. So you're going to get a little bit of harder to hear sections and some crowdedness, but it adds to the charm, I think, for the most part.
All right, Jim. The chat's coming out with their teeth bared tonight. I love it. Swing it.
Oh man,
they're taking notes every episode, guys. You
remember shit I don't remember, and I live every moment of this thing here.
What about week. Watchmaker, Kellen?
Yeah, I forgot I think I blocked Watchmaker out of my mind.
Yeah, that was a rough one for me.
That was a rough one.
That was theater a tragedy. But yeah, man, I love the production on this. It sounds like an underground technical thrash metal album. That's exactly what it is. It's you know, a very imperfect production. But I like that the guitars are kind of thin here. And the reason why is it allows like the bass guitar and the bass drums like to have
Exactly.
this really cool low end punch to them, kind of like that rumble I referenced earlier. And so, you know, whether intentionally or inadvertently, you know, the rhythm section is given a lot of intention, and that low, you know, kind of EQ overall, for me, balances out the sometimes screechiness of Wolfgang or Keel's vocals. So I no complaints there. You know, I already talked about how they, you know, they bring in like the harmony elements or like the volume swells, and I think those are all really strategically placed. So, you know, given, you know, there are obvious limitations in the studio, whatever that may be based upon, you know, the size of the label or their available budget or whatever, their musicianship overcomes it for me. And the, you know, underground, like almost demo overall like state of the recording, where, you know, it isn't clean at all. It's very ugly. I think it makes this album heavier than it would be otherwise. I think if it was too clean, it wouldn't be as fun to listen to. But I think that's sort of like that grimy factor of production layered on top of this technical thrash songwriting style makes it angrier for me overall. Makes it more palatable for me, and just in general more fun to listen to. So I really wouldn't change it. I like that that's where it kind of sits, you know, in that sort of like, you know, abyssal pocket, if you will, of sound for me. Without that, you know, tide cleanliness that would rob it of some of its energy. So yeah, no complaints really on anything there. It's kind of one of my favorite things about the album as a whole, because I do feel that the production, along with its brevity at 37 minutes, make this like a really cohesive listen for me. And if it had been too clean or if it had been any longer, then it would have been a chore for me. So this contributes to my overall enjoyment of the album.
Kellen.
Yeah, I don't have too much to add there. I agree with what kind of Logan and Jim had said about sort of the lower mid-range to bass part of this kind of being a little bit slim overall in terms of weight. But it's one of those things when, you know, Jim mentioned sort of these sort of bass runs that happen, or when a double kick does show up, it feels like completely believable. There's nothing inflated or disproportionate about this mix. So there's 100% this sort of like believability in terms of guitar tone and overall instrumental kind of like texture kind of thing. Yeah, I also, to Logan's point about sort of like the landscape or sort of the frame that it operates in, it does feel a little bit small in terms of the mix, but I totally believe that is just an underground thrash thing for this time period. It's, you know, small label, small budget. So I actually did not mind the mix here at all. I think it's kind of a consistent theme we've had on Album Club. Sometimes more complex, intricate sort of instrumentals require a certain degree of clarity, where you sort of diminish the amount of distortion and gain that some of the instruments get. And I think that's kind of present on this record overall as well.
All right, Rick.
Production, right?
Yep.
I got caught up in his chats. I didn't realize this episode would strike such a nerve with Devin, like the gates of Ishtar.
Well, he got really very quiet. He's done flipping tables over here. He's over bitching about us in the Discord probably right now.
Okay. So ARG Records, you know, not a name I hear come across too often, unless you're buying More Living Death or whatnot, you know, stuff coming out of Germany. I went in with the expectation of not expecting too much, which I think helps a lot. At the same time, understanding the climate of what was going on with just generally thrash metal in the late 80s. There were a lot of these bands that were kind of a little rough around the edges, at the same time. A lot of us who were thrash heads were already used to this.
Yeah. It doesn't sound out of
Yeah.
line with anything, right?
But also, I also feel like in retrospect, trying to go back to an album like this at this time period, we might have gotten a little spoiled with, like, for example, really good singers, right? If you're coming from Queensryche and Midnight, John Arch, and these guys, it's like, and going back to someone like this, but here's the thing I love about thrash metal. It's, you don't have to be a good singer. I feel like it's more 60-ish% attitude, personality than technique. Then if you go into something more progressive or power metal, yeah, I can kind of see where the expectation would be more important. Paul Bailoff wasn't a great singer, for example, right? So I feel like there's opportunities where I can kind of I guess I can give leeway to the fact that there's not a lot of this sort of very proficient excellence. But does it do its job? What thrash metal is meant to do, and I think it does. I think it does it successfully. But there are some things that I'm like, do I give a consolation for this? Like that, I King will come, right? Like, it feels like they were making a compromise with the label, going, we need something for the radio. Just give us something. I feel like that's one of those tracks. I actually don't hate it, but where it fits in the context of this album, it does kind of feel a little out of place. I don't know if we got to the tracks questions itself, but just talking about the production in general, how some things kind of stand out and others don't. Like in the middle, they put that instrumental, and they did that with the first album. They kind of do this sort of horror Primus thing. It kind of what it sounds like to me. At least a portion of it. I know it starts out with this sort of light kind of what do you call it, melody, before it moves into that and everything else. But that's me kind of having fun with it. I kind of go with the attitude, I'm going to have fun with this. I'm not going to take it overly serious. And I think that's kind of what they want. They want you to kind of go in there, listen to this, bang your head, but at the same time, understand that this is a band that is also just trying to be fun, but do things that are interesting, and they're learning along the way. Not many bands. Yeah, there was Watchtower. There's a few other bands, so we're kind of doing this kind of thing, but we're still very underground. These guys were not getting a lot of airplay on the mainstream channels. These guys I've mentioned much less. I was like 7 or 8 when this album came out, so I wasn't listening to Mekong Delta. when this came out. But going to this in retrospect is interesting, and it kind of forces me to revisit kind of this time period, what's going on. So there is some consolations I do give this album for what it is. I appreciate it for its art and what it's trying to do, but at the same time, I don't try to put a stick up my bum about all the little peculiar things, regarding for what the product is, and what this label is putting out. These guys, it's kind of when you're visiting, what's the drinking German band?
Tankard.
It's like, they're just having fun, with this. They're not, I'm not saying they're Tankard. These guys are more, they're trying all kinds of different things. I don't know enough technical about technical playing to say this is a 15/16 of, or whatever time signatures and whatnot. But it when you hear it. You know it, that these guys are really good musicians. They played in previous bands, and they kind of just evolved into this thing. And they have this project where they have this sort of outlet, where they can kind of go out there and be a little more adventurous with this. They always have these other bands they could fall back on and whatnot. And they're German. We just know the Germans are just quirky and weird in their own way. I think with the Musicality, it's been years, and they put out several albums since then, and but I can't speak because I'm not versed enough in their discography to speak very well into the overall kind of schematic of how this band operates. But I think that they, regarding the late period in the 80s, I think that this is a band that could always be pointed to in a period of time where they were trying something different. But they also accomplished the fact that they had some really good grooves, really great drumming, bass playing, cool guitar work, dual guitars, may I add, with
Yeah.
this, which kind of adds to the dynamics. My only complaint, well, the biggest complaint, besides some areas of the vocals, is that I feel like in the most frantic moments, some of the interesting bass playing does get lost in that mix. I feel like I kind of have to force myself to, even with the CD, which one of the reasons why I got it is to get a better idea of what's going on, but it's still a little hard to make out what's going on until these open moments kind of, space out and I can hear kind of what's going on with what's going on there. So it's kind of tough to say this is a very balanced album because it really isn't. There's a lot of unevenness going on with the production. I feel like there's moments where the guitar's more punchy and and the bass sometimes gets its own side, but I never at any time feel like this is all super level. It really isn't. And I understand this is not they're not a Sony, they're not a Def Jam, they're not in any of these known bigger labels where there's a lot more attention put into this sort of dynamics at the same time. But for what they set to accomplish, I think it did its job. And these guys were very well aware they were in the undergrounds, and it has a very underground kind of sound. And I think people love that charm. If that's what you're after and that's what you're used to, and that is kind of what you're after with the style of thrash, with a couple more interesting kind of elements kind of thrown on top of it. But I feel like would I have liked a better, more remastered version of this? I think it would have brought out more stuff that would have brought in a reason to bring in new fans to see and show more appreciation for what this band is trying to do. Even with this high roller reissue, I'd like for high roller. They do really good reissues, but I think it also, with this reissue, it also showed some of the cracks in this album even more. That was more apparent. That I didn't even notice before. At the same time. But going back to the thrash singing, it's not, if they're cemented in being just a thrash band, not a prog band, I think there are some proggish elements happening here, of course, but they're first and foremost a thrash band, so that gives them a bit of forgiveness that they're not they're not Jeff Tate, going in that direction. So
All right. Well, production for me, a lot of great points here. And really, I listened to this and it doesn't sound produced badly. It sounds like a product of its time. I like the fact that they chose to strip back a lot of the lower end. It feels, Kellen said small. I think it's more focused and tight. You can still hear every single instrument. I just like how it kind of makes you focus in on the precision of the playing. I like the mix of it. I like where everything sits in the mix. It sounds like a thrash album from the 80s, and that sounds like home kind of to me. So yeah, I have zero complaint with that. The fact that we talked about earlier, the production is one of my favorite things about this record, and the musicality too. Very, very good. Least favorite songs. Jim.
Well, let's get the bad news out of the way first. Yeah, I King will come, man. I just don't understand. Like, it doesn't fit with the record at all. Like the riffs. I mean, we're talking good mid-tempo, alternate picked 16th note riffs all the way through the record, and then suddenly we've got and I'm like, whoa, what? And it didn't bother me at first, but on subsequent listens, like, it started standing out to me more and more in a bad way as on subsequent playthroughs. And I think if this was a song on another record that wasn't prefaced with all this like great mid-tempo alternate picked thrash, it would be fine. But here it just stands out. And I think that the biggest tragedy about it for me really isn't even the riffage so much, it's just that overall this song comes across as boring. So even that really slower tempo for these guys just doesn't work. I think when these guys are energetic and they're playing faster, that's when they're at their strength. That's when they really grab your attention. So with that out of the way, I like everything else on this record. For me, there's no other stinkers. There's no other skippers. There's something, as I mentioned earlier, on every song here that I kind of wait for, like, oh man, this cool part's coming up, or like, hey, I remember something's cool here. I want to give that like a bit more of my attention. Like on Confessions of Madness, after the second chorus, there's like this weird atmospheric break. It's really brief, and then they like bash right back into an odd time riff with rolling double bass. It's like, wait, what? And that kind of weirdness there, that's Mekong Delta, not playing like, kind of like accessible triplet, slow tempo stuff like on that I King Will Come. But weird moments like that are what keep this record strong. I even really like the instrumental. A lot of times, instrumentals are kind of hit or miss for me. Like I feel like it's an opportunity. Something could have been a song, but it's so strange. And I like the dissonant acoustic part in Interludium a lot. It's acoustic, but it's a dissonant chord. So it's really intriguing. Then they throw in this crazy classical elements at the end, which those aren't so awesome for me. They're okay, but I really like the acoustic playing on that. Back to what's important. One of the best songs. I know we're getting a lot of mixed opinions on the opener, but I really like Age of Agony. I think it has everything that comprises what the album's about, and I think that any good opener for a band does that. It gives you, hey, this is what you're getting in for, and it really pressure for that. I already mentioned Confession of Madness. Let's see. Hatred's pretty cool. Prophecy's pretty cool. Memories of Tomorrow is another good one here. There's some standout bass work. On some odd time riffing on the chorus. It's weird because the verse riffs with the way the vocals are over, this song almost feels like it's just a straightforward track, but it's not. The odd time comes in and changes it up a little bit, but it does kind of make this song a little bit easier to follow. Final Deluge, I already mentioned. This song has that amazing bass solo at 220. You really get to hear this guy shine. He throws on the distortion. They pump him up in the mix, and it's just as loud as the guitars on the solo. It's really, really killer. And Epilogue. I'm typically not a fan when a band goes mellow for the last song, but it doesn't bother me here. This is short. It really is an epilogue. It's only like a minute and a half long. I think some of his best vocals, and there's a weird kind of like drony, almost industrial feel to it, like as it fades out. And I like the line, "What have we learned?" And what have we learned is that Mekong Delta are weird, man. That's what we've learned.
Yep.
Like I said, so in summary, the only stinkers I King Will Come. I really like the first three tracks a lot, along with Memories of Tomorrow and the Final Deluge.
All right. Kellen Cowell.
Yes. So I actually think when this band is probably a little bit more subdued, they're at the best. I really like Confessions of Madness and Prophecy. Those songs are like a little bit more straightforward, but that's given the context of this band, I think they're complex enough and entertaining. They aren't distracted in any way. And they are not trying to do too much. I kind of agree here with Jim's sentiment on Age of Agony. Like, that is the most bonkers song on this album for me. And either you're going to be like impressed with it, or you enjoy sort of what's going on there, or you're completely going to neglect this album and this band. So it could be sort of an eliminating factor, but I don't think it's the best song here, but I do think it is sort of like a mission statement. Yeah. I King Will Come is like, okay, here we got incredibly complex, talented band in terms of what we're going on and what we're doing here. Let's make a doom song, but let's make it an off-kilter doom song with weird sort of time signatures, and let's do it with a vocalist who can't really hang. And it is just strange, and yeah, to your point, doesn't belong on this album. And it also like serves as antithetical to the identity of this band and this record. So it's just strange overall. Despite the like strange vocals in Memories of Tomorrow, where it's like, I will defend you, like in the corner of the room kind of deal. I do think it's one of the more interesting sort of lower key tracks on this album. And I like the interludium, Begging for Mercy. You know, I think it's also like a cool little, a bit more instrumental focus. But I think it also shows off a lot of the talent of this record. So there's still plenty here to. I'm sorry. I've exhausted myself early on with the vocalist and the disappointing here. Sorry, Underground, but there's still like some cool tracks here and a lot of great ideas by brilliant musicians.
Rick.
Yeah, well, the previous album that they had a cover of Black Betty. They were as adventurous this time around, including something like that here. So kind of nitpicking through the tracks here. I still think the first few tracks are probably the strongest. I think it has best exemplifies what this band's really about. I love that ascending thing they do in the very beginning of Age of Agony, just to get you ready, kind of get you know what's coming, you know. And I love the moments of the double bass drum coming in. You know, it's not my favorite production for that kind of thing here, but it's good enough to be enjoyable for what it is. I'm not saying the production's terrible, but you can tell it's not the polished thing you might be used to if you're listening to the big label albums, you know, going to something like this. I think the song that best exemplifies this album as far as what it's trying to do with its hatred. I love those dissonant moments and those off-timing things that they do, and the way they go into these frantic solos. It's a little heady there, but it's cool. You know, this is interesting, you know, and you kind of just want to stick around for it. Confessions of Madness has a little bit of that too. Confessions of Madness, I think it also begins as a more catchy, very straightforward thrash track. If you didn't know anything about this band and you play Confessions of Madness, you wouldn't know any better until it gets further into the song. But that also has this very good lead guitar work on this.
A lot of cool solos. Yeah.
I did notice that between Confession of Madness, Hatred, Prophecy, Memories of Tomorrow. I think that's their attempt at doing this. So this chorus, you know, but I think that it doesn't make it too apparent. It doesn't stick out in that kind of way. Like this lyrics, like I think it was Wolf on the Grave. I've seen this all before. Dear Me, Memories of Tomorrow. It does kind of stick to my head, but it needed a few spins. But it was one of those moments where the words really kind of stuck to me. It felt more like a personal thing than the other tracks did. I think that once you hit the second side of it, after I Came Will Come, you're like, okay, this is weird. It doesn't seem to fit the theme of what we were already, at least where we were comfortable with what this album was about. But then we get to the final deluge, and there's more of that melodious vocal work kind of going on. If that's not your thing already by this point, and you get more of this, I can see how that will not be a favorite track of yours. It is not a favorite track of mine. I think that's kind of a skippable track. But then it gets into epilogue, and I'm trying to understand the epilogue. I'm trying to kind of shoehorn it into the concept of this Erich Zann thing. I don't know enough about it, but it seems like it's the lyrics are placed into this kind of thing, but it doesn't feel super conclusive to me. It's almost like you know when you play Mario and you hit the end of the level and it goes, "Thank you, Mario," but the princess is in another castle.
Yeah.
I feel like this should be something else there. you know,
Bait and switch.
yeah. It's called epilogue, so it's the final thing. Weird. I got this I got the CD and it came with a bonus. It's called the Nom, or it's the Gnome, I guess. That's the last track, which was a bonus thing. This would have been a cooler ending track for it, if that was the situation at the time. But going by just the regular flow of the tracks, I feel like it ended on such a note that I feel like I wanted something to have that nice, real big final cymbal snare thing to kind of really make it very conclusive for me. It was more of a somber but very light note for an album that was trying to be a little more ambitious with their performing. So I find that the second side, the weaker side. My favorite tracks. I love the way Age of Agony opens up to kind of get you in, but I don't feel like it's the defining moment for the album. Between Confessions of Madness and Hatred, I think are the best moments on this album. I do like the way Prophecy begins after the interludium with the instrumental. It's a really cool segue, the way they do it. So between like the first few tracks in the middle to Prophecy, I think that's where, and then from there is a little more downhill for me. Kind of overall. I don't hate it. I think this album it's definitely worth revisiting, but it took me a couple spins to understand not so much the album, but Mekong Delta, as a band, kind of overall. It just made me curious enough to explore their other albums, even though I don't think that the vocalist it's the strongest point in this album. But I did kind of take a peek into the next album, and it looks like there is some improvement there as far as the inflections and voicings going on. But here it feels like it's relying more on the aggro and just the attitude of what thrash music was like at this time, and why people were buying this or getting into this kind of music for what it was. So there's a bit of a compromise there as far as forgiving the fact that the musicianship was not as I guess as polished, as some of the bigger names. But I would say that my favorite track will probably be Hatred is still my favorite track on this. I think it still has a little bit of all these crazy elements and things going on and transitions that's still very quirky and interesting, but also very defining of what I understand what Mekong Delta is about. But I could do without the Final Deluge.
All right, I think I'm last. I really like the first half of the album. Age of Agony, right away, hits you with the complex, Watchtower vibe, bass dominant riff storm, really good. I think the off-pitch background vocals are kind of going for a haunting vibe here. It just kind of a bizarre vibe, but I think I started to realize that it's because he's just not hitting his mark. That's why it's more bizarre. It's more faulty than authentically haunting or bizarre or whatever. But his shouting style right away is way more fitting to this precise version of thrash. True Lies might be my favorite song on the album. I really like the energetic guitar and bass work on here. And I love how they throw in the odd time signatures as well. They break up already obtuse measures with a little strange twist. And that's continued another favorite. It's Hatred. I'm with you on this one, Rick. There's the music break on here. They do this off time thing that's so subtle, but it shifts the the measure just in a weird way is so cool. I wish they would have done it a little bit longer. It's a really good thrashy part with a lot of movement and flow to it, and then they throw in this thing that kind of makes it feel like someone tipped the floor a little bit. It's really cool. The album dips in quality around track 7. The interludium, instrumental, as we've discussed, and I said earlier, I think this is pretty innovative for 1988 with a true orchestra and the focus on the orchestration. But the metal elements they add to it, they're just basically crunch riffs that feel a bit random, like they just kind of come in and out and no real semblance. It's a track that feels incomplete with a lot of holes in it. So it's like it's cool they tried it, but there's a lot of missed opportunities here. Memories of Tomorrow, mostly a good song, but the off-key background singing, it's bad. It's like eating a piece of steak and accidentally biting the fork. Oh, that feeling when you bite metal accidentally. Ugh. I King Will Come. I've already been there, but you get a bit of a uptick. I think the Final Deluge, to me, it's a really good heavy hitting song. That should have been the proper ending. Epilogue, talking about how we saw space and just kind of warbling off the mark. And I don't know, it kind of leaves an anticlimactic bad taste in my mouth on this album, but 3/4 of the album is great. So, and even the bad stuff on here doesn't completely torpedo the record for me. So having said that, let's talk about Judgment. Final thoughts. Rick?
Can I talk about my favorite songs real quick? Sorry.
Oh shit! I thought I'm sorry. I thought I got everybody. I'm so
I know
sorry.
you don't want me to talk about I King Will Come, but
bring it. I'm so sorry, Logan. I thought I had.
No,
everybody.
you're good. It's.
I mix up the flow every time,
and
I get fucked up. Yeah.
Yeah, you're good. I'll be quick.
You're good. Take your time.
Definitely a case where it's interesting to see where everyone kind of approaches and what everyone hears as they're like, finding favorite tracks and stuff, because there's definitely some differences, I think, and I will demonstrate for sure. When first diving into this album, the 3 tracks initially stood out to me: True Lies, Hatred, and I King Will Come. True Lies, just a great, just in like technical but still weird off-kilter thrash song. I love the chorus on that. I think I talked about it earlier. Just it starts with that atonal warble, and then it goes into more of a gut-punching chorus hook. And some of the melody lines and stuff that the guitar work is doing on that track is phenomenal. Hatred is a close second favorite. I enjoy the spoken word intro too. The people can't even look over their coffee cups or whatever. That section is fun as it gets right into the ass kicking intensity of hatred. The vocal attack I absolutely enjoy during the verses, and then it gets towards the chorus and we just have that exchange between the group vocals and the mad shrieking of the vocalist Keel here. And I love the chorus arrangement and how it goes, kind of builds to the actual chorus. So Hatred's big. Quick defense for I King Will Come. It's just such a weird, you guys are right, it doesn't fit. It's a weird off-kilter like change up, but I like it. I think it fits just the feel of this album, and it like you've been through so much to get to track 8. It finally kind of slows down a little bit, and then this just weird and off-kilter jarring doom riff comes in, and I'm all hooked for it. And then we get to the chorus, and it's even weirder and more off-kilter, and like just coming from different points in the range. And it makes me think of Soundgarden, actually. I get like a bit of a mixture of Outshined and Jesus Christ Pose.
All right.
Like I think the guy is like trying
obscure poll, but I get it. Yeah.
Yeah, he's trying to shriek a little. That wasn't even around at this point. Like this is all me just coming back, looking at it from 2025. But he sounds like kind of Chris Cornell, or that like Robert Plant kind of imperfect but powerful warble. Of course, he's nowhere near as good as either of the 2 vocalists I mentioned, but I think it still works, and it kind of lands pretty impactfully for me. And I just love the change up of the intensity. I like both interludes. Interludium actually makes me think of Primus, another 90s reference. Rick, you mentioned Primus earlier. Just I think that's the parts that you don't like, Marty, where it's like it feels like it gets heavy for random sections. Makes me
Yeah.
think of a cross between Puddin' Time and Mr. Crinkle by Primus. So I'm a big Primus fan. I
Right on.
enjoyed that. And then I love Epilogue. I think after the Final Deluge, which I do like as well, I think it makes sense to like, just take a breath and just fade into space in the ether and just weirdness. Jim, you said it perfectly. Mekong Delta is weird. This fits weird Mekong Delta. Even the songs that I didn't mention, I've actually slowly grown on, like Age of Agony's grown on me, Prophecy, and Memories of Tomorrow. So, yeah, nothing nothing bad at all on here for me. So,
Judgment, final thoughts. You're up. You might as well lay it down.
all right. Yeah, I'm just happy to finally have the chance to listen to this. I was impressed. Of course, it took forcing myself to listen to this on the album club to. Otherwise, I doubt I would would have fully come around to it. But I'm glad I did, and I think I needed to be in a thrash mood as well because that helped, with the sheer intensity of some of these tracks, and I ended up finding a lot here, and I think for anyone who enjoys that off the wall, somewhat more obscure, like second tier, third tier thrash, Mekong Delta is a must listen. And to me, this is the best I've heard from them. I've only heard the first 3 albums, so take it with a grain of salt. But if you can get past the vocals, I think you will have a great album here. I know for me, I did. It's thrashy. It doesn't lose, it doesn't go up its own ass trying to be too progressive or too out there. It's unique though, and most importantly, energetic. So I think I'm still digesting this, but for now, it's like an 8.5 to an 8.75 for me. And just happy to be able to listen to this with y'all.
Jim.
Well, like I said at the beginning of our show, I bought this after listening to it, just like one playthrough. I really like this. I like technical thrash in general, so genre wise, it's not a stretch for me. I just love all the odd time signatures. It's like just off camber enough where it's interesting, but not so out there that it's difficult to listen to. Like it still sounds like metal. It's still something that you can thrash to. So it doesn't get its head up its own ass like a lot of progressive metal can do. The songs are still there. So for me, obviously, it's don't buy, would buy if it's cheap, or would buy. Obviously, for me, it is a would buy. I did buy it, and I think that if you're interested in progressive / technical thrash of any kind, if you like the Watchtowers of the world and such, then I think Mekong deserves your attention. If I think the first album is a little more straightforward than this one. If you want something a little more straightforward or less weird, then maybe check out the debut. I haven't heard the third one, but I think that both of these albums are great, the first and the second, and from what people are saying in the chat, the third one's good too. So yeah, this one's up there for me. I like it.
All right, Rick.
Yeah, I would give this probably closer to an 8. I'm glad bands like this are around. Like every once in a while, if you run to that jaded metalhead, but you got bands like Mekong Delta that are not as well explored, that you can kind of pull out and be like, this thing exists. It's got some interesting things going on. And I think that from here on out, I think that there's a lot more I think that's worth exploring, which I'm going to do. This kind of piqued my curiosity enough with a band that, you know, as old as this album is, the fact that it's still relegated to this very underground, even amongst people who are into, like, you know, some of the more known bands and Voivod and whatnot, you know, this is still kind of kept a little bit under the rug. For this particular album, I don't think it's one of those, it's great all the way through. This is an album that has a lot of great moments, kind of sprinkled a lot here and there. It does have that iffiness, but I understand it. If you're a less forgiving listener, I could see why this would be difficult and not as digestible to kind of, if you're more used to the straightforward stuff. But I think this is a great band. It's cool they put this project together for this particular reason, to kind of expand this sort of horizons for what they're trying to do with thrash metal. Because sadly, we know what happens. Which came out, what, 88? I think it was 87, 88. I think it was 88. Okay, so I look at metal pre and post. It's like the BC AD thing, where like the Black Album. Everything was before Black Album, after Black Album. Everything changed. And so this is right before Black Album, only a couple years before Black Album, and people got the thrash hit, and before everything kind of turned the tide for what we know what happened. But it's got a nice charm, you know, for this time, and I hear it all the way through, and so it does kind of take me back. So that's another reason why I do like visiting something like this, and from a region of the world that, you know, I feel like other than the big name bands coming out of Germany, this is another C tier. I wouldn't even put a B tier. It's more like, as far as recognition, C tier kind of recognition, as far as bands coming from out of there, especially who don't sound very obviously American or German, should I say. There's Americanisms to this, I was trying to say, and some Canadian semblances along with this. But it's a cool listen. I'm glad you picked it up. I'm glad like stuff like this, like the album club, it's able to kind of put this in the spotlight. And I'm glad to have able to got a chance to be reintroduced into this band in a more proper fashion.
All right, Kellen. Have I skipped anybody? Jim went. Jim's gone. Jim went. Yeah. Logan started. Kellen's up. Right on.
Yeah. So despite my reservations regarding the vocal performance on this record, I still think it's canon. Like, I still think it's an incredibly important band and album to sort of the more technical side of thrash. I think if that's something you're into, it's an absolutely mandatory listen. I think the three that Logan picked up are 100% part of that story. If you want to be someone who's really into thrash and you like more challenging thrash as a genre and sort of subgenre, like 100%, it's worth your time. You should listen to this record. I think that the one that follows it, Principle of Doubt, is one that I think I favor by comparison when we listen to tonight. But like, if you're unfamiliar with this band and you've kind of listened to the staples within thrash metal, specifically from the German scene, like, this is definitely one you should add to your playlist. When I was kind of discovering this world, like, they were one of the more important names that you needed to know. So I think for any like diehard thrash fan, you need to listen to Mekong Delta. And this is definitely one of the records that you're probably going to come across when you give them a listen.
All right. Yeah. Again, it's very cool that Logan picked this. I've always been curious, and my interest is definitely perked. I'll be checking out other albums by these guys. Am I running out and buying this one? Probably not, unless it comes up used somewhere, or I don't know. I really enjoyed listening to it. It worked its way up to a 7.5 for me. A little bit better tracks on the back side of this record would have been the saving grace, I think. But yeah, good record. Interesting to hear. Really appreciate you for picking it. And Next week, Jim is picking. You're muted, brother.
Okay. Yeah, I think for this time of the year, and we're ringing in the new year, I like something a little cold. So how about some Sacramento far away from the sun? You guys doing that? Cool.
Classic.
Yep. Rest in peace, singer, bass player guy.
Yeah. Awesome. And some show notes. Tomorrow, 9:00 Eastern PM. Alan and myself will be launching the 2026 metal album, Metal Vinyl Tag. So the metal tag, whatever I'm trying to say. We'll be here tomorrow night, 9:00, doing that. Friday, Pat from Ground Zero Salem will be joining us. We don't have a topic yet. And on Sunday, I've been asked to join the Mandatory Metal and Mayhem show with Shredbeard and Toasted Goat. They're going to be interviewing me. This is on Shredbeard channel, and it's 8:00 Eastern time on Sunday. So I think they're going to be asking questions about metallurgy and Beinrune and stuff like that. So go over there. They have a fun show they do every Sunday. A lot of comedy type stuff, but yeah, they have an interview portion of their show as well. So I'll be over there doing that on Sunday night. You're going to be seeing a lot of this weathered old face this week. Sorry. And guys, anything you want to add before we jump?
Well, this weekend, Saturday, we're doing our top 25 albums of the year over at the Gas Mask channel.
Hell yeah.
So all the finalists, panelists still to be completely determined, but it will be a big enough of a group. So all I'm saying is, if you know how we roll, prepare for an endurance run. I plan to show my expanded list, so I will have 25 to kind of go with. I think Gas Master Jeff is live right now as we speak. So if you guys want to see a Collector Scum update, go there. But we'll again Saturday we'll all be on there live. So if you got nothing going on, just tune in and enjoy the new year. Showing 2025 best ofs. So I don't know if you guys wanted to add anything, if anybody plans on being there, but if not, it's all cool. But I will be there.
I'm glad you remembered to sit, because I totally am lost in what day it even is. So obviously I think it's Wednesday right now and it's not. Anybody have anything they want to add?
Also, a shout out to my boys at Burial Gift. I got an 8 out of 10 in Decibel this month.
Awesome.
So kudos on them getting the review and getting high praise. It's a really great review. If you guys read Decibel, check it out. And the tape's selling well too. So yeah, really happy to be working with these guys. So, cool.
Awesome. Go get your Burial Gift tape. Link in the description. Go check out these guys' channels. Everybody, Happy New Year. We'll see you tomorrow.
Happy New Year.